Hi, welcome to Om Shanti Healing. In this video, we're going to talk about opening up the front of the pelvis, working on lengthening quads, adductors, abductors. So we're going to get lateral hamstrings as well and work around the whole front and inner and outer part of that thigh, and then we'll get hamstrings. So this is kind of the group that we're looking at here. We're not going to be doing this particular yoga pose, but it gives you an idea of the muscles and where we're going to be going with it. So here's the front of the pelvis. We're going to be opening up this area. We're going to be opening up through here, okay, and also into the hamstrings. With a low lunge with just a little bit of pelvic tilt, that's all we need to get quite a bit of a depth in the lunge. Okay, so let's set up. You'll need a yoga mat or a carpeted floor, someplace to be able to go into a low lunge where you're not going to be hurting your kneecap. You can always bring in a blanket or something for underneath your knee. Okay, so we're going to start with the right leg forward. So mirroring me, that's my left. It's your right. Okay, so your left leg is going to be going all the way back to as much length as you can get. So the front leg is lining up where the knee is over the ankle, and we feel a nice stability in the front end. So this arm, your right arm, will go outside the leg with a flat palm. So your arm is kind of hugging, the armpit's hugging around the knee for stabilization and support. Then the left hand's going to be down on the ground. Okay, so we're sinking into the pelvis and we're just taking a few breaths, observing what we feel here. So all we need to do with this one is just a tiny bit of pelvic tilt. So as you can see on my left side, my hip is square to the front of the mat, right? So my pelvis is in a neutral alignment with itself, left and right. So all we have to do when we start to go into more depth here is to lean. So we're going to lean a little bit to the right first. So as you can see me shifting my weight, what that's going to do is it's going to take that left hip joint and it's going to turn it out a tiny bit. So you're kind of feeling like you're on the inside edge of the left side of your kneecap. So that hip turns out a little bit and you feel that pull up the inner thigh. So this is the adductor group. This group stabilizes us as we're walking, running, biking, squatting, so forth. It contracts with leg, whereas the leg comes more towards the midline. So we bring our legs together, it contracts. It lengthens as the knees move away from the midline, right? And we have external rotation of the hip. So we can feel that sensation there very clearly moving up into the bottom of our pelvic girdle. And we feel that stretch. So we just breathe into it for a few moments. And as we practice our yoga and we're breathing into the body, we offer up space as we breathe in. So with our inhalation, we move energy and we create expansion. We set intention to open up tight areas. So we take a couple of deep breaths. And then as you exhale, you allow that space to release a little bit. Good. So we intentionally soften with the exhalation every single time. Let's take another deep breath in. Good. And then we're going to come back to square. So my hips are coming back to a squared position where my pelvis is facing towards the front. And then we're going to do the opposite of that. So we lean a little into the left arm, which is going to turn that hip in, right? And we can accentuate that pull if we want more depth by just gently twisting at the pelvis. We don't need to go very far with it. We feel plenty up the lateral part of our quadriceps, and we feel it all the way up into the spine of our pelvic bone. We want to deepen with a tiny more twist if we feel we have some room to go more. And we take that couple deep breaths to help open up the body. Good. Very nice. Come back to center. So we simply rock back till we get that sensation of it being right up the front. Now as we get into right hamstrings, Pelvic girdle lifts up and back. I don't want you to pull at your tailbone. Lift the whole pelvis up and back. So the toes on this right foot remain on the ground. Now notice if your toes are floating off of the floor, right? Most cases people lift their toes because it's not as intense in the adductor group this way. In those more medial hamstrings, you don't feel it as much. I want you to do the opposite. I want you to push your toes into your mat and feel that stretch. Then the right hip is going to pull back gently. So we're taking that hip joint, visualize it, anchor it to the back of your mat, creating more space in the hamstring group, and hold that pelvic alignment still as we take a deep breath in and reach the spine forward. So we're lengthening this way, creating room, and then exhale, come down, hinging right at your hip. We come down into the inner thigh, creating more depth in the fold. Now our backs are rounded here. We're feeling our navels pulling up a little bit into the lower back to stabilize. Take some weight off of this left side with more rounding and more lifting up through the core space. So we breathe into this hamstring group here. We're taking some deep breaths. Our arms are lined up right underneath the shoulders. We have a good base here to stabilize. Now let's see if we've got a little more room. Press your toes again, because odds are you pulled them off the mat. Right hip anchors back. See if you got a little more room to go a tiny bit more. Good, and then let's lengthen. Inhale, reach. And exhale, fold. Coming down. So let's hold this for 3 deep breaths. Good. Now as we come forward, the whole pelvic girdle lifts up and forward, back into lunge. We walk the arms forward into alignment and we sink down and take a breath. So we notice some change from when we first came into this position. We feel more open in the front on this left side, and we feel more release in the hamstrings over on the right. So let's switch sides. We're going to take that leg back, bring the left leg forward. The right leg slides back all the way. We get a good base with our leg, and we're lining up this arm on the outside of the foot. So we have a good stabilization for the ankle and for the knee. So my arm is set, we're stable, and I'm sinking down and taking a couple deep breaths here. And we're feeling it out through this side. Now let's lean. We're going to go to the left first. So that's going to take that right hip and turn it out a tiny bit. So we feel that pull up the inner thigh, right up into those sit bones and pelvic floor area. So we want to sink the pelvis, breathe into this area for a couple more. Let's stay for 3. Just really tuning into the sensation we're feeling in the body, breathing into those tight areas and letting the exhalation release. Good, come back to center. So we have a sensation of our hips being square. We're right up the middle here. So let's go over to the other side. So we're going to lean right. That's going to turn this right hip in. So we feel that pull very laterally, moving up the lateral part of our quad group, up into the spine of the pelvis. And you can accentuate with a little more twist if you would like. Holding here, 2 more. Good, come back to center. Square off. Now the whole pelvis up and back. So these toes are going to stay on the ground, pressing the toes into the floor. The left hip joint is going to anchor to the back of the mat. Our arms walk back under our shoulders to give us nice stability there. Once we get that length through the hamstrings here, once that hip pulls back as far as it can, and we want to keep it all comfortable, then we hold the pelvis there, and we're going to lengthen on the inhale, reaching through the crown of the head. So we create space up the spine, and then exhale, fold. Good, and we deepen as we go. Come to our first stopping point here in the body, where your body says, okay, no more, we're not going any farther, and you breathe into this area for a moment. Good, now let's try again. We're going to anchor that left hip. See if we should have a little bit more space. Even if it's a micro bit of movement, check in with that. Move into that spot, hold it, and then we're going to inhale, reach, and exhale, fold. Holding here, 3 more. Very nice. Hips up and forward, back to lunge. Settle in. Take a moment there. Good. Lift the hips up and back. We send that leg back and sit down over your heels. Good. So quick, easy way to open up the front body here around the pelvis. We hold a lot of tension here. We hold a lot of emotion here. And it can get very, very bound up in the body and needs some release. So these are where we're working at the top here, were all attachment points in the front for some of those hip flexors, right? Anytime we lift that knee off the ground, we're engaging the front body here, right? Anytime we turn the hip out, we're working around the curve this way, right? So these muscles get tight because we're upright beings, and we're always using these muscles and working them very hard, especially if we're more athletic and active. If we sit and we're stagnant in our lifestyle, if we sit behind a desk all day and we don't do much, these muscles can get very short and tight because they're not being worked. There's a lack of blood flow and circulation into the area, and it can cause some pain and some tightness there too. So hopefully this aids in releasing this area for you, and you find it very useful. Subscribe to my page. This year I'll be making more videos. I've been slacking a little bit on that, but I'm coming back to making more videos here now that I've got a quiet space to do it in, and I will be putting more up online. So subscribe if you like, and if you're in Larimer County, look me up at omshantihealing.com. Thank you for watching, and namaste.